Meeting to order and invite everyone to rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America,
to the republic,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll start with the agenda approval. Any changes or additions from staff?
Mayor and Council, no changes or additions from staff. Just as far as walking through the agenda, we do have a public comment opportunity at open forum. That's for items not on the agenda. And then there is no planning or unfinished business, so we will have another public comment opportunity under new business. And then just a heads up, I will be requesting under item 12 to potentially reschedule the work session for the 24th just based upon some staff time, but I'll discuss that at that time. So no changes from staff.
Okay. Anything from council? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve, Bodema.
Second, Schultz.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Luther, aye.
Aye.
Luther. Okay.
Aye.
Bodema.
Aye.
Schultz.
Aye.
And Anderson.
Aye.
Okay. You can tell I've been away for a while. Miss one meeting and I lose the stride.
That's all right.
Okay.
I've been called worse.
I'm voting for people though too, so that helps. Okay, our commission representatives tonight are Dean Varenkamp from the Planning Commission and Phil Christensen from the Parks and Trails.
Hey, Dean.
Again,
Hey, guys.
If you want to shout out, if something comes up, you want to shout out and be recognized, we'll recognize you for anything that comes up in your area.
There we go.
Okay, an open forum. Do we have anyone here who wishes to comment on the open forum? If so, let Jessica know by, I guess she'll let you know what you have to do now to be recognized. So I think you're muted, Jessica. No?
No.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now you can hear me. Wonderful. Well, thanks, Mayor. If anyone is listening and wants to raise their hand, they can do that by pressing *9 on their phone, or they can use the raised hand function by clicking on the participants tab and the raised hand function by doing that. Otherwise, if you are on a smartphone, you can click the 3 dots and you'll be able to raise your hand. It does look like we have one individual, Sarah Jane Nichols, who has raised their hand. Sarah, if you could go ahead, I'm going to unmute you, and then I'll ask that you state your name and address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
This is Sarah Nichols, and I am at 6334 Steeple Chase Lane. I just have a quick question for the council. I am preparing my public comments for the September 24th meeting, and I'm wondering if I would be able to submit 3 or 4 PowerPoint slides to use as part of my discussion. I have noticed that the staff and developers use PowerPoint slides as part of their presentations, and I think I would be able to convey my message much more clearly and concisely if I were able to do the same. I recognize I will only have 5 minutes of time, and I believe I won't even need to use that entire amount of time if I were able to include a couple of slides with my comments. I could submit these ahead of time of the meeting and ask that they be put on the screen when it is my turn for public comment. I want to do this to make the most of the staff's and the council's time, and I would really appreciate your response on this so I can plan accordingly. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll speak to that. Typically, we would not allow that. I guess given the circumstances of the remote meetings and everything else, I guess I'd allow some flexibility there. I guess I will ask you though to provide those to staff before the meeting, so that everyone has a chance to be aware of what they are. So we don't want things to be clumsy where we're trying to catch up with things at the meeting. And so if you get them to us ahead of time, sir, that would probably be helpful.
Great, thank you. Would they be able to be on the screen when I have my public comment opportunity?
I assume we could do that, yeah.
Should
Sure.
be able to do that.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
You're welcome.
Do you want to provide her a date that she needs to submit them by?
Yeah, Mayor and Council. So typically when we have slides presented, we actually want them for with the packet. So I'll follow up with Sarah. And
Okay, yeah. And I think typically that would be the Thursday before the council meeting, or the Friday before the council meeting, so they can get them out to us. But Brad can give you specifics on that. That's a good point, Alan. Thank you. Is there anyone else for public forum?
Mayor, at this time, we don't have anyone else who's raised their hand. If you'd like, we could wait just a moment.
We can wait a second or two here just to.
Again, feel free to press *9 or use the raise your hand function.
Okay, I guess there's no one here, so we'll move on.
No one else. Yep.
Okay, we have no presentations or recognitions, so I'll move on to consent agenda consisting of items 7A, B, C, D, E, and F. Would anyone wish to pull any of these items from the consent agenda? A bunch of people are muted, so if you're trying to talk and you're
No.
okay. Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items consisting of 7A through F as presented.
So moved. Schultz.
Second, Lothar.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Latimer.
Aye.
Lothar.
Aye.
And Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no planning business and no unfinished business. We move on to the new business, which consists of items 10, A, B, C, and D, which I'll read them through so we take public comments so people know what we're addressing. It's the 2021 preliminary levy, the 2021 proposed levy and taxes insert, the CARES Act fund use plan, and the park building roof repair. So if anyone would wish to comment on those items, please be recognized by Jessica, and we'll put you on.
At this time, if you do want to be recognized, please press *9 or use the raise your hand function under the participants tab. Mayor, at this time, no one's raised their hand. We could give it a moment if you'd like.
Okay. Okay, if no one has raised their hand, we'll move on. Okay, item 10A, which is the 2021 preliminary levy.
thanks, Mayor and Council. And there's a couple slides we'll get up here shortly. But essentially, this is that time of year when we have to adopt the preliminary levy for the following year. And we have to do that by the end of September. Typically, we've been doing it the first meeting of September, just in case there were any additional work to be done before the end. But the ask is to adopt the preliminary levy this evening. And it's used to send the property-specific notices in November, where each property will actually get proposed levies and taxes, not only from the city of Corcoran, but other jurisdictions as well, school district, watershed, county. And after this point, it can be reduced but not increased prior to final adoption. So the process thus far, and back in May, the council provided some initial direction. We had the first draft of the budget reviewed in July. We refined it since, and then tonight we're hopefully adopting the preliminary levy with that direction. The proposed levy is just over $5 million. It's about $93,000 less than the previous draft. And the projected tax rate is really almost exactly stable, just a very, very slight reduction from 45.013, which is today's tax rate, to 45.011. And as far as how it impacts properties with no change in value would actually see a slight decrease. However, that's very unlikely. The average increase for Corcoran for residential properties, for example, is 3.6%. And the example here shows the difference in taxes. So on that property that was at $342,000 would now be at $348,840. And with that slight tax rate reduction, taxes would go up roughly $61 for the year, or about $5 a month. And just overall, I think one of the ways to look at the cost of government is just the overall cost. So the average home would be $1,571 a year, or about $131 a month, which I think is a pretty good deal for city services. Next slide, Jess. As far as revenue by category and expenditures, here you'll see the property taxes account for about 74% of all revenues. This has been trending downward over the past couple years. It was closer to 82% a couple years back, with other different revenues coming in for the city. As far as expenditures go, you'll see right there as far as administration being 25%, planning and engineering 3%, public works and parks 29%, police 25%, fire 6%, and then transfers and debt for service being the remaining 12% of the overall budget. So one of the questions I think I would ask myself is, okay, I'm getting charged an extra $5 a month. What's in it for me? Obviously, with everything, costs go up incrementally. So everything from gravel to dust control to salaries and everything else goes up. So it's obviously incorporating some of that. There's also some pretty significant staffing and consultant additions to provide the services needed for the city as it grows, and also the hand services. So the full-time planner position is going to start later this year, but we'll have a full year of that next year, and that's pretty significant. That's going to have a 40-hour week a person to answer questions and assist with city services. We're moving with the police sergeant position to have some additional patrol and officer support at nighttime. Like I mentioned a couple of times right now, between Matt and Ryan, on top of their day job, they're on call 24/7 when anything comes up at nighttime, not having any formal supervisory position. So the sergeant would start that. Our plan is to add a second sergeant in the 2022 year that would complete that. We have a new community service officer position starting later this year, and that would continue next year for a full year. And again, the main goal there is to continue the high level of service we do provide as our community gets busier. Sometimes as we get busier, the officers can't necessarily have time for some of the lower priority calls, such as injured or lost animal, or locked out, or house checks when you're on vacation. But it's important for the council to keep some of those items that are important to the community. So by having this community service officer position, it allows someone at a little lower route level getting into law enforcement to do some of those items and still provide good quality service. Another improvement for next year is finance assistance. We're planning for some consultant help. Again, right now I'm a finance director as well as city administrator and a couple other hats too. And at this point, with a city this size, it's pretty rare we don't have a finance director, and we're actually just projecting a consultant to help with the finance, and this will provide an enhanced oversight of finances. A couple months ago, we were notified that our assessor contract was not going to be renewed by Rolf and his team. So we have the new contract with Hennepin County, and that was more costly as well. On top of that, it was a priority of the council to enhance some fire services, especially with some of the businesses. So rather than having a stick approach, there's really more of an education approach for reaching out to businesses, from educating them on a fire standpoint, and working with our fire departments. We have additional stormwater funding. I think over the years since I've been here and before my time, obviously water issues get more and more each and every year. And we don't have a stormwater fund for Corcoran until we just started a very incremental approach with the 2020 budget. We're enhancing that for 2021, and hopefully we can provide more support for those stormwater issues. And then also continued investment in our capital improvement plan funding. And again, our goal is to cash out the majority, if not all, of our fleet purchases within the next couple of years. And that saves on borrowing costs, as well as it also allows more flexibility. Right now, when we levy or issue debt for a 2-year plan, we're saying we know what's going to be replaced 2 years down the road. If we have cash on hand, we could certainly potentially delay some of those or adapt as needed. So that's important for the community to save money as well.
Brad. I'm going to interrupt you. This is John.
Yeah, you have, John. What's your question?
Yeah. I don't know if everybody on the council understands the capital improvement plan fund. Do we need to explain it, or is it? It's something that's super important and it's a part of a big part of the budget, and it wasn't started by this council, but it started 5 years ago. Can you shed some light on that? It's not kept.
John, I think that's a good point. I think just for everybody's education, it'd be good, Brad, if you could just maybe give us a little 30,000-foot view of what that's all about, would be helpful.
Sure. I think it was back in 2014 budget, I believe, is when we started the capital improvement plan. And again, it's just putting cash aside for your purchases. So we operate off of a 5-year financial management plan where we project our needs, including fleet. And we see how much cash we need to have for those purchases. And again, we've been setting that aside for 6 or so years now. And so every year we increase that more and more. So the goal is to cash out all those purchases for the city to reduce the amount of our borrowing. And typically it's items that are at least more than $5,000 and last for more than 5 years. That's not a perfect threshold, but it's something. Anything less than that really should be just in our operating budget. But it's a very planful approach for managing our fleet and equipment for the city.
Thanks, Brad. John, I think that's a good point. I think that's in addition to the other things that Brad was mentioning that we're getting for our dollar from staff is that sort of thing. We're getting some really good financial planning, and that's one of the not insignificant pieces of that planning, which is meaningful. And I think it's why our bond rates are going down.
Mhm.
So, okay.
Correct. Yes. So with that, that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions, but really looking for the council to adopt the resolution 2020-68, adopting the preliminary levy.
Okay. Any questions, observations, comments from the council?
I just have a kind of a 30,000-foot question. How does our budget compare with some of our neighboring communities, either on a per capita or tax rate or on whatever basis is most convenient?
A good question. When we had our audit come through, there was some comparison of everything in a fourth class city. Well, that's a large gap. I don't have anything in front of me regarding similar sized communities. Their budget is a lot of it's different priorities for the communities too. For example, you look at maybe a Delano, similar size. They have a county police. They don't have a 24/7 police department of their own. However, they also have their own fire department, whereas we contract out. So I could certainly get back to you with that information.
I can help.
Okay. Go ahead.
If you look at Medina, if you look at Greenfield, you look at Wright, especially Wright County, you look at Hennepin County, Maple Grove, Plymouth, Rogers especially, and you look at who's raising their tax rate and who's lowering the tax rate. I think of those communities I just mentioned, there are maybe 2 that have consistently lowered their tax rates. We're the only one for sure that I know of that has. So on a tax rate basis, which is sort of what I think about, we're doing a great job. And all you have to do is read the newspaper. Wright County increased their taxes like 40% 2 years ago, and 10% last year. It's crazy to raise their tax rates in a growing economy like we've had, but tons of towns are doing it. It's a trend, and it's a unfortunate trend. So we're sort of bucking the trend in the opposite direction, which is sort of when we set out to put these budgets together. That's the directive is rates equal or lower than the year before. And Brad's been able to do that.
Yeah, I think that's well put, John. I think the other one that I would suspect is lowering their tax rate is Dayton, but they had a year or 2 ago, I know their tax rate was up in the 60-some percent, whereas ours is 45%. And they have been working on lowering. I don't know if they've been successful every year or not. But yeah,
they haven't. And I know they haven't.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, point well made, John. I think for everybody's information, that's been a directive we gave to staff, was to lower the tax rate every year, or have a heck of a good reason why we wouldn't. And so far, their staff has succeeded in doing that. And a bit of the reasoning for that is that we're looking to, I guess, if you will, to reward or at least not punish the existing residents of Corcoran for the development that's coming into Corcoran. And I think, quite frankly, I think we're doing a fairly good job of it, and we should be pleased with that. So anyway, any other comments, questions?
I was just going to comment on that too. It's the movement in the rate that's the most important thing, not the rate itself. You can't compare our rate to some of our neighbors because we just don't have the tax capacity that drives that rate down.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. If you look at our rate next to Medina, Medina's rate is quite significantly lower than ours, but they have, at least a few years ago, they had half the population and twice the tax base. So obviously their rate can be a lot lower. So. Other comments, questions?
I just had a couple comments and a couple, well, one comment and a couple questions. One comment is good job in keeping the rate the same or lower. Do we have, I'm curious to know before we get to the December 10th meeting, do we have anything that breaks down revenue by category as far as properties, so we can see the split between commercial, residential, and non-residential, like ag?
Mayor and Council, yes, I can do that. And I remember Councilmember Schultz, you asked for that last year as well. And I apparently didn't make good enough notes of bringing that through. So I will
No,
put that
they
together.
haven't had the time either this year, so.
Yes, I can do that. It won't be perfect, but pretty close.
Okay.
That would be good. That would be good to know that. Certainly from going forward, it's a good metric to have. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay, here are no other comments. I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2020-68, which adopts a preliminary proposed tax levy collectible in 2021 in the amount of $5,054,460.
So moved. Bottom. Sorry, Tom.
Second, Anderson.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Anderson,
Aye.
Bodema,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, staff, for doing a good job. I know there was a lot of work put into this to get this down where they could lower that rate. And it's a metric only, but it's an important one.
Important
At least it's a telling one. So.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, item 10B, which is the 2021 proposed levies and tax insert.
Mayor and Council, as typical, we like to provide a little more education for residents when we do these updates. So we have a proposal in front of you just to include this sheet, as we do most years. It's about $900. I did find one typo. Actually, I didn't. Jess CD found a typo on the first line with the date. So we'll change that to tonight's council meeting date versus the 12th. But just looking for a motion to authorize us to submit that insert as we do most years.
Yeah, I guess just my observation. We've done this in the past, and I think it's a very worthwhile thing for the citizens to get. So, any other comments, questions?
No, I agree.
Yep.
Okay, hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to have this insert put into the mailing at the cost of $900.
So move, Schultz.
Second, Lothar.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Bodema,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 10C, which is the CARES Act Fund Use Plan.
Mayor and Council, as stated a couple times in our previous discussions, as well as in the report, the city received just shy of $440,000 of CARES Act funds, with the requirement that they're necessary, that they're not accounted for in the city's most recently approved budget, and the performance or delivery must occur during the period of March 1st through November 15th. And here in the packet, we have the proposed first wave of funding. Jess, want to go to the next slide? I can walk through that. Essentially, we have a proposal for just under $370,000 of the costs. The first on the list is Council Chamber Technology Update. Now, this amount is a complete guess. I am getting a formal quote next week, but we're assuming something around the $50,000 mark. And really right now where we're at, we can have fully in-person meetings or we can have fully virtual meetings, but we can't do the hybrid, some in person and some not in person. And really for us to be effective during this pandemic and beyond, we need that technological ability. So that's the first item. The second item is an election storage trailer. Because of COVID, we've had to have significant crowd control and management needed for this, and we've purchased that. But we need a place to store it. So we're suggesting election storage trailer. This also would be a very nice piece of equipment to have in the future, just to have all election equipment in one spot, especially now that we have 3 precincts. We could then just pop it from one to the next, and it'd be good for setup in the future as well. Followed is additional computers for remote working. We need a few more staff to be able to work remotely at this point with a little higher ability computers. Another guess on cost here, but it's internet extension to Public Works. Right now we're on Nextera out there, which is really, really slow, and it's really hampering the ability of Public Works to get the job done, especially during this environment. So we're trying to work with Comcast to see what the cost is to get that extension complete. I think that's really important for the city during this pandemic. We're also including eligible staff reimbursement. One of the allowed uses is staff whose jobs have been significantly altered to respond to the COVID pandemic. So that would include portions of Matt's job, Ryan's job, Jesse B's job, primarily those 3, as well as some officer time that we can prove as well. Now we have to be able to kind of prove those numbers where we get there. So what's included this is a 70% assumption of that time during the time period. And we're going to refine that and prove all of the percentages, but that's our lumps we have in there right for now. Another technology need is really equipment for the EOC and training room. Again, our cops and other people have not been able to go to regular trainings like many out there, but we're still required to get the trainings completed. So we need to upgrade our EOC so we can have trainings as well as record them. So those that aren't present, our part-time officers, for example, can still get use of force and other trainings needed in a timely manner during the pandemic. So that also would be a very important item to have. Next item is patrol room office furniture. I know no one's been back there, but right now we have these wonderful sheets of plastic just hanging down with some tape between police officer areas, and I don't think it meets our ideal working conditions or even close to it. We're doing the best we can, but we need some office furniture updates over there. We did get a quote for that, so that is the formal quote at $18,300. A respirator mask has been something that Matt and Ryan have been looking to acquire due to the pandemic. So we're proposing purchasing those to respond to homes for known contaminations. The Loretto Fire Department, since they're a nonprofit, they're not a city, they did not receive any CARES Act funds. And what they've asked the cities to do is proportionately fund their needs. So whatever city's paying X percent of their overall budget, to pay that same percent of their COVID costs. So, which we feel is extremely reasonable, and we included that. We're also projecting a FEMA gap. Now we can request a grant for 75% of some of the funds, which we have submitted, but we still have to backfill that 25%. So we're assuming that $20,000 right there. Additionally, I will note, it's not on this list, I think it's on the next slide, but we also would like to upgrade some faucets in City Hall to be touchless. So I guess not a significant purchase, but I'd add that to the list here too. So essentially we're about $370,000 we're looking at in our proposed plan coming before you tonight. Next slide, Jess. So as I mentioned the first thing right there, but the remaining amount's about $60,000, and that's intentional. First, we don't know if we're going to get the FEMA reimbursement, so that's a significant part of it right there. It also leaves a gap to react in case something comes up that we hadn't thought of or we need to react to. Again, we do need to purchase and actually obtain these items prior to November 15th, so we need to act quickly. So really looking for a motion to authorize staff to utilize the funds as presented with that addition, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a few.
Okay.
If nobody else wants to go first.
Go ahead, Alan.
The 55,000 or the 50,000 estimate on internet, is that infrastructure for bringing internet for Comcast pulling cable to the facility?
Correct.
So we'll actually see probably some other members of the community benefiting because now they'll have access to that cable.
I don't know. There is that one house on the corner of 19 and 10. There's the house across the street. I certainly wouldn't commit to that, but if somebody can piggyback on us, more the merrier.
Okay. But there may be some ability to spill over, which would benefit the community, which I think it would be good. The furniture and faucet purchases, are they going to be purchases that can be used with a remodel?
Yes. The reason that the main restrooms are not included for the faucet is our contractor quotes already include the faucet improvements to the main public restrooms, so I didn't include them. But the other areas are actually not going to be touched. So the restroom in the police department and the restroom back where the ambulance area is, those are not being touched. So it'll be changing those faucets out, and then potentially some of the sinks at the two little kitchenettes we have. But the main public restrooms are not included in this because that's already part of the budget with the remodel.
Okay, but the furniture participation,
Sorry. Yes.
when I was saying participations, it's not partitions.
Partitions.
And the police department would be, so, okay.
Yeah, and we were looking to reuse items too, so it's not entirely supplanting those funds. It's additional.
Okay. And then my last question is regarding to the Loretto Fire Department costs. They're going to pass that cost on to us so we can bill it, correct?
Correct. So I'm not sure whether, I'm sure it'd be an invoice and then we could pass it through, but we are able to pass through our CARES funds to other groups who have eligible uses as well.
Oh, so it doesn't have to be a billable item to be covered under CARES Act?
Correct. I think what happens, I think I have it scheduled on October 8th to bring a resolution to the council. And I think
Okay.
I'll have a, whereas we'd also like to give X dollars to Loretto Fire Department for their needs.
Okay. That was my only questions. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
When will you know about the FEMA reimbursement? You know, is there a time schedule on that so that we don't back ourselves right up to the deadline?
Yes, there is. I want to say it's October 18th for some reason is in my mind. But what's typically been happening is we submit and they'll kick back really quickly any problems with the submission. So they'll work back and forth a week here, a week there, so we know what they've included. So the first submission, say it's $40,000, they might say, yep, this $30,000 makes sense, but this 10, we need more information before we can say yes to. So we will know before the November 15th deadline for certain.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to utilize the CARES Act funds as presented.
I'll make a motion, Lothar.
Second, Bottom.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Anderson,
Aye.
Bottom,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay, 10D, which is the park building roof repair.
And I'll turn that over to Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Up on the screen here and before you tonight, we are bringing forward a request to repair the park building down at City Park. It was installed approximately 40 years ago with really no significant improvements made to it since that time. Most recently, we had, we've been planning the park down there and what we're going to do with the purchase, and we've really been focusing on doing everything we can to limp the building along and the facility along. And we've been fairly successful for the last couple of years, but most recently in the last 12 months, we feel like we're losing that battle and we've potentially reached a tipping point where we've had significant water penetrating the building and causing multiple issues for us that required maintenance. The facility, for those that don't know, is used primarily for two purposes. One is storage of our equipment, and it's also used as a warming house for the ice rink. So it is essentially a public building for a portion of the year. So again, the damages or the concerns that we have is safety concerns with that amount of water entering the building. You know, we like the garage opener shorted out, and we had a couple hanging furnaces short out. So we have significant water penetration that's causing a safety concern for us. So this is an unbudgeted item. If you can go to the next slide, Jessica, that would be helpful. This is an unbudgeted item that will result in approximately a $10,000 overage that we feel that we can accommodate in our budget this year. We went out, Pat and Brandon went out and secured some quotes and worked on a cost-conscious solution to help extend the life of this building. So through their hard work, they were able to get a quote from B&B Sheet Metal and Roofing in the amount of $11,621 that would basically overlay the roof, the existing roof, overlay it up, seal it up, as a 5-year warranty period on it. We believe we can get potentially more than that out of it, but we have a 5-year warranty with this quote. And we feel like this will help us extend the facility another 5+ years while we make other decisions in our continued park planning. So that's really the urge that we have is, we feel like we don't want to lose it any further. We're going to have a more significant issue where we might not even be able to use the facility. So that's why we are here for you tonight for considering a motion to approve this quote from B&B Sheet Metal and Roofing in the amount of $11,621. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any more specific questions you might have.
Yeah, Kevin, this is Brian. Are there any mold issues with all the water that's come in that need to be addressed and corrected?
I think the goal is that we need to do this now so that we don't create mold issues, to be quite honest.
Could somebody in Public Works actually do some kind of assessment as to whether or not the water penetration has created some mold issues? Because I think that needs to be considered a safety concern as well.
Yeah, I think we'd have to outsource that. So if that's a concern, we can certainly do it. We have not conducted that specific of an analysis of the facility. Again, the significant penetration has really happened within the last 12 months. So we feel like, that's kind of the rush to bring it up,
right.
Instead of budgeting in the next year's budget or whatnot, is really just to test. Now we've been limping it along, and now we feel like we've, it's getting too significant. So we want to jump on it and seal it up, and let it recover a little bit. So we'd have to pursue that if you're interested in that further, but we feel like this is an appropriate step to kind of resolve that concern long-term as best we can.
Where in the, new park planning does this building get replaced? Is that we talked about phasing, but I don't know that we saw.
It was not, and Brad can jump in. I don't believe it was in what we presented back in July, the phase 1 plan. There was no improvements planned in phase 1. No, that's a concept kind of formal plan, so it could be probably adjusted, but to date it was outside of the phase 1 plan. So probably 3 to 5 years at the earliest, kind of conceptually right now. And I don't know if Councilmember Anderson or Brad could add to that.
Just to confirm, Mayor and Council, correct. It's not in the proposed first phase, and part of that was just needing a little more time to understand the facility needs of a growing community, and then just the significant cost of facilities. So, if that was going to be, something such as a ice rink / neighborhood center / everything else, it was pushed to a second phase because of that.
Okay, so we didn't really have time frames on phases. So do we foresee the new roof getting us through to the point where the building actually gets torn down and when it's rebuilt?
Yes, that's the goal with this ask. Yes.
Okay. No other major needs of the building that we can foresee at this time?
Have you been in there, Alan?
No, I have not.
Has anybody on the council been in that building? I know Tom and I were in there a
Yeah,
couple of
we've
years
been in
ago.
there. Yeah.
I've
It
not
is
been
During the
it is-
winter time.
yeah, it's not Corcoran's finest facility. It's
The water doesn't. Does the water work in there, Kevin? I don't think the water works in there.
We don't allow people to drink out of it. I think it works, but we've turned it off.
Oh, okay. And the bathrooms are unusable, right?
I believe they're readied for the specific ice rink season, but that's when we open it up to the public. And again, I don't know how often the public wants to use them, but they're
I don't know if they.
I believe they're operational, but
Are they? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm torn on this because you don't want to put an $11,000 roof on a $5,000 building. And that building is, I guess, I've been in there a bunch of times skating and playing hockey and stuff. And it's just, I don't know. It's not very nice on the inside. It doesn't seem to be well kept. So I kind of want to hear about, like, is there a way to, I mean, I'm struggling with putting that kind of money into a building that is in such poor shape.
Well,
But wouldn't the question then be, John, if we're not going to fix this, then we'd have to get some kind of an idea what it would cost to replace the building?
Or take
Because
better care of, if we're going to do some work on it, take better care. We got to take better care of the inside of it, I think. We as a city need to say, okay, either we care about this building or we don't. If we care about it and we put a roof on it, I think we ought to pay closer attention to the inside of it. At least so it's presentable. We don't have to spend money, but we should.
Well, maybe that's an instance where we look for community support to
That's what I was
put
going to
money
say.
in, from some of the community groups. The question about replacing it versus fixing it, if a $11,000 or $12,000 roof gets you 6 years, that's $2,000 a year versus paying $60,000 to replace the building. And the building's not going to fit in our 10-year plan for this park anyway. I guess I'd be inclined to make sure it's fixed and safe for use in those next 10 years.
I agree with you. It's more of a rant of not taking care of the inside of the building.
No, and that's a good point. I haven't been in the building, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, looking at the outside, it's not the prettiest facility, but maybe we can look for some community groups to provide some type of money, and maybe we'll find another Eagle Scout group that wants to do some sweat equity
Spruce up the warming house.
Spruce it up a little bit for us.
Yeah.
And Mayor and Council, I just want to say, these are the exact conversations we've been having for years. Actually, I think my first year in 2013, Pat had talked about the need for this building to get replaced. So it's just a little defense of Public Works. They do the best they can, and they've been having to, skimp by and replace things here and there. And no, it hasn't seen any paint here and touch-ups that way, which certainly could happen. But there's always been, how long is this building going to be used for? And so it's been a low priority as far as that. But they do the best they can with what they have, I can say that. But I think to Councilmember Schultz's point, that was our exact point. Either we can continue to spend $2,000 a year like we are fixing things, or we can, as Kevin talked about, spend 11.6 now and forget about it for 5 years and not deal with it. And I don't think it's going to be less than 5 years until we build a new building. They're just significantly expensive. I think even $60,000 is a really, really low number.
Yeah.
I'm not I guess it's a self critique. Like the council should care, even if it just means paint. the building needs a little attention, and it's not an indictment of Public Works. It's more this is an opportunity for, I guess, the council to say or acknowledge that we should take care of this building better.
Yeah, I certainly would be supportive of that, John. I think it's if this is a place where our kids and families are going, it's one of the few places we have in Corcoran for that opportunity. And whether we put a little bit of city staff time.
We lose time.
Suspended.
We lost you, Ron.
Maybe he's just sitting there like that.
Muted.
While he's coming back, I think if we did a thorough house cleaning in that, especially in the warming house half, did a very small upgrade to the lighting, it wouldn't have to be elegant at all, and just a fresh coat of paint, it would make a pretty dramatic difference. I think that we could handle that. Right now, it looks sort of like nobody cares. It just needs some TLC, and that doesn't necessarily have to be expensive at all. I think it would improve it. It's going to go from being really, really bad to sort of quaint. If we shoot for quaint, I think we can do that.
And I think we've got time between now and the skating season to actually.
Well, and will kids be able to be in a building during skating season, or do you have to find some way to make the warming house outdoors?
Yeah, and Mayor and Council, we appreciate that. And I took a note here. I actually think that'd be a perfect Eagle Scout project. And I do get approached on a regular, and we can work with staff. But just regarding future planning, we are talking about whether we are going to have a building for ice rinks, or whether Public Works builds a little lean-to where people can change their skates outside and not go in, or benches. And Jesse B's having those conversations with other parks departments around the metro too. So we are talking about that as well.
I just want to add one comment from Public Works standpoint is everything you guys have communicated tonight is understandable, but to do that, to really get the most value of that investment, it starts with repairing the roof, because we could paint that building every year and it will have problems. So that's really the ask, is the roof comes first, just like the foundation. So we get it, but we need the roof first, quite honestly. So
yeah, and I agree with that. What I'm saying is let's just continue the process of updating or upgrading or improving, or have the whole building be worthy of a $12,000 roof.
I suspect staff has gotten the message that we'd like to see a little more effort put into the building, and that's probably a good starting point for us. So good discussion. Any other comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to replace the roof to the amount of $11,621.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Anderson,
Aye.
Fatima,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
you're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll move on to staff reports. Item 11A, which is a pandemic response update.
Mayor and Council, just a brief update tonight. Just myself, Matt's off this evening. City Hall continues to be open 9 to 1 Monday through Friday. We talked about the CARES Act funding. That's been a significant planning item that we talked about this evening. As mentioned, the council chamber update is a high priority, so I have the quotes coming in. And ideally, we can get some, if not all, of the council back in a couple months. I think the technology, once improved, will work significantly better compared to what we're doing here in the community room and your own living rooms or wherever you're at. With that, we're planning to transition to a virtual emergency operations center to allow the council chamber to get back to its use, and that can still, I think, function quite well in this type of an emergency. And the other final thing is just with the election coming up, it's been a gigantic planning effort for Jessica and her team. In person, voting actually starts next Friday. So we'll transition to the 8 to 4 Monday through Friday, beginning next Friday, and bring a lot more people potentially into City Hall and a whole nother essentially business function to the city from September 18th through November 3rd. So really appreciate Jessica's efforts there. But we continue to function as best we can during the pandemic. That's all I have.
Is there any thought to turning the warming house into council chambers? Upgrade them both at the same time.
That would get an upgrade done real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Would be certainly on the priority list. Okay, we'll take that as being a little bit of a sarcasm. Thank you, John. Okay. Any other business?
Mayor and Council, just want to
schedule.
review the schedule coming up, and I do have a specific ask. But the 24th is going to be a big one from a planning standpoint. Really, the biggest thing would be Eagle Brook Church coming through, as well as Nelson Trucking. But the one item I did want to discuss, we currently have a work session scheduled for 6 p.m. Before that evening to talk about residential district standards. And staff has been inundated with data requests from residents and non-residents, and quite a bit of other work that's just popped up that has not allowed us to get our job done to be prepared for the work session in a timely manner. So my recommendation would be to reschedule that work session to prior to the October 22nd meeting. That'll allow us some time to finish our research and have a high quality discussion on those standards at that time. And so I guess that's a request in front of council this evening. We would appreciate that.
What is the date, Brad?
I prefer it for October 22nd.
Okay. I guess I don't have a sense of great urgency for that. It's an important issue that we need to talk about, but whether it's now or on the 22nd of October, it seemed like it would be as timely as the other.
Yeah, I might not be there that day.
I would agree. Looking at the agenda for the 24th, there's a lot of things there that could take a fair amount of time, and I think the council wants to go into that meeting not having already done a 1-hour work session.
I think, Brad, constitutionally, before a meeting about residential district standards, we'd be very limited in what we could speak about before the actual meeting, and both sides had an opportunity to present anyways. We wouldn't want to have it. Then we wouldn't want to discuss residential district standards 1 hour before a meeting where on the agenda are residential district standards. I don't think that would, I think we'd have to be restricted so much in what we say that that meeting wouldn't be a very effective one anyways.
Well, would we? Because whatever we say wouldn't be non-binding on that meeting. We can't pass a resolution in a work session that affects a meeting an hour later.
But if you express a direction of voting, or something that could be interpreted in a direction of voting in a meeting that happens an hour later, people would find issue with that. You'd have
right, but you could express that same opinion right now if you wanted to.
Correct.
It wouldn't change the fact. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but you're in the meeting. You're forced to express those opinions and bring them out, which is fine. I mean, I don't have any problem giving my opinion about that issue at any point in time. But I don't think it's I think that's a point, John. I think Brian's point is probably more to the point, and Brad's point of they're just too damn busy to be prepared for this, and it's a heck of a big meeting. And after the length of the meeting, the September 24th one is going to be, it's hard to get good discussions at the end of those meetings without adding another hour to it.
Totally agree. Yeah.
What was the work session for the November 12th? What was that? It was to be determined.
Oh, thank you, Mayor and Council. So that was earlier this year, pre-COVID, when we came up with this grand scheme that we're going to have department work sessions, and we'd bring you inside and show you the ins and outs and talk about issues. So we had 3 departments, and that was going to be to be determined. So yeah, we could certainly also push to November 12th.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess by consensus, you can go ahead and just move that, or do I have to call the work session now for the 22nd?
Since we did call the September 24th, I think it would be, now Jessica, should we actually by motion reschedule it because it's been called?
It would be nice to do that.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to reschedule the September 24th work session to October 22nd.
I'll make a motion, Lothar.
Second, Anderson.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor,
I was just gonna say, I probably won't, I don't know that I'll be in attendance that night, but don't change your plans for that.
Okay, well, we can muddle that issue over as we, between now and then as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Anderson,
Aye.
Bodema,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so we've covered the schedule. Any other business? Staff? Anything from council? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Thomas, aye. Anderson,
Aye.
Bodema,
Aye.
Lothar,
Aye.
and Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice to have you
Okay,
back, Mayor.
Good meeting. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Welcome back.
Nice to see you all.